Greetings. Welcome to week 6, heading toward the finish line. Uh, Before, let's kind of quick review where we've been. Okay, so coming into week 6, over the past 5 weeks, we talked about Discover and using commandlets, store manipulating objects, writing structured scripts, building reusable modules, and performing server and security automation, and handling errors and scheduled tasks. Okay, today, rather than looking at going more into a deep dive of a single script, we're going to do a little comparison just to let you know on how other scripting tools operate in comparison to PowerShell. PowerShell, I think I mentioned, I'm pretty sure I mentioned it is not the only scripting language or in scripting environment. And so we're just going to take a brief overview just so that you'll be aware that when you get out into the work world, and that you'll look and be able to see that when you recognize that there's other scripting languages, how is that applied against PowerShell? So the ones we're going to be looking at today is Bash, basically from Linux, VB script, bash scripting, which is .bat, and you're going to hopefully leave this week with why PowerShell was designed differently than these other scripts we just mentioned, and when other scripting languages are still useful and in fact may be preferred over PowerShell. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, what makes PowerShell different? Let's recall some critical features. PowerShell passes objects through the pipeline, not text, not data, but objects. Key thing remember with objects is object has both data as far as fields, okay, with it, but it also has methods. Okay, so it has basically processes built within the object that not only tells you what it is storing, but how it's storing it and what are those processes. So we look at, get process where object is CPU is greater than 100. Okay. So this is a process that we're working with, and it has the data, but it also has the process of actually doing something and looking and selecting particular objects in the get process. Okay. So if we compare this to traditional shells, other shells pass plain text. PowerShell passes objects. PowerShell was built as a management framework, an automation engine, and object-oriented shell. And if you kind of look at some of the idiosyncrasies of PowerShell, it matches Java somewhat, being that as far as how a object works and the methods that's associated with it. So let's take a look at Bash. Again, just an overview. We're not going to try to get deep into the ins and outs of Bash. We just show a touch point looking at it, what it does. So Bash is the default shell for most Linux systems. If you're familiar with Linux, we have Windows, okay, we have Mac. So Linux is another type of system you may or may not have touched for. Basic Bash scripts start with this particular syntax. Pound bin bash. That line is calling a shebang. Okay. It tells the system which interpreter to use. Basic variable syntax in bash is, for the example, I'm setting a name and I'm basically printing that name out with the echo. Again, not looking for you to know, but just going to give you an overview of what we talked about in PowerShell and how it's handled in Bash. Okay, no $ when assigning, $ when accessing. Conditionals, if name is Mac, then echo hello Mac. So echo is basically the printing portion of Bash in comparison to PowerShell. Here's how we loop in. Loop for I equal 1, 2, 3. We do echo. Just an example. Here's our filtering. Again, it does use the bar just as we do in PowerShell. Okay, as far as the path here. Okay. Okay. Important bash pipelines pass text, not objects. So filtering relies on text matching tools like grep and awk. Yep, different names. Okay, grep, knock, sed are basically key acronyms. Okay, within bash. Scheduling in Linux is done using Chrome. Chrome uses a time format like 0 to *** script sh. Again, really kind of foreign, as far as maybe exactly what it does. But this is just to give you an overview that says, okay, for this particular Linux scripting tool, here is the format that's basically been structured for that. Comparison insight. Okay, PowerShell, structured objects, native filtering, bash, text streams, parsing with tools. Both are powerful and architecturally different. So totally different architecture. VBScript is a legacy Windows automation. Okay, before PowerShell, Windows automation relied heavily on VBScript. So this was kind of the predecessor to PowerShell before it took over. Just kind of an overview. VBScript was used in Windows administration, embedded in older web technologies, common in login scripts. Okay. Example reading here, we're doing a set. Okay, we're creating an object. We're creating an object, scripting object, file system object. So we're actually creating an object here. So somewhat using objects, but in a different method. Problem, no structured pipeline, okay, like we did up in, we had for Linux. So here we actually did use, okay, going back up to here, okay, we used the pipeline here for PowerShell. And here, okay, trying to find it. Where is it? Okay. Okay, just we did actually use where is it? Okay, we're gonna come back to that. Now I was trying to get back to the pipeline. Okay, basically, and when it was used in. Okay, I'm gonna back up here a little bit. Okay. Okay. Okay, I'll present this in class. I was looking at, I thought pretty sure that we looked at shebang. Okay, there we go. I'm sorry. Here we are. Here, okay, with the bar. So we do use pipelines, but this pipeline is passing data and not objects, but it does use a pipeline. Okay, and this is when we're talking about bash in the Linux system. Okay, but again, just overall, as far as VBScript, okay, kind of not trying to get deep into it, but just it doesn't use any structured pipelines. It's less reliable, limited scalability, not object driven when compared to PowerShell, which is all of the above that we mentioned. BAT files, BAT files are older Windows shell scripts. I can remember using BAT files quite often as far as running scripts. But again, this is an old version. Example, echo off, echo hello. You're still using the term echo to kind of the print, but variable set name equal mac echo here as far as writing things out. Similar to VB script that we used to that I mentioned before, but again, so this is just kind of give you and insight. Okay, so batch scripts, simple, text-based, limited capability, still used for quick startup scripts. What they lack, again, not basically looking from an object perspective, structured error handling. Okay. Okay, so just if we looked at architectural comparison, PowerShell objects, batch text, BB script, object-like, because we actually do create objects from it, but not pipeline driven. Okay, so they're really not driving the pipeline. Filtering, PowerShell, this is an example where how we do filtering, where we're selecting certain items. Here's how we do it in Bash. Okay. PowerShell filters are based on properties. Bash filters are based on text patterns. Okay, we do have scheduling. We can schedule with PowerShell with the task scheduler. In Bash, it's the cron. Okay. In Bash, it's the task scheduler. In the VB script, there's the task scheduler. Okay. Modern enterprise use, we've talked about Active Directory, Azure, Windows 365, security automation, DevOps. Okay, Bash basically does the same thing, same goals, but what they does is in the Linux system, and has a cloud structure and Docker environments. Okay, again, not really that much concern with this, other than when you see Bash, you'll number one know what it is, okay, in comparison to PowerShell, but you also, in delving into the syntax and exactly how it does work, okay, you will have at least a marker in the ground that says, okay, I know what script systems do. Here's what PowerShell does. So when you're learning Linux and you're learning Bash, okay, the syntax will be different, but the functionality is what you're trying to achieve is going to be the same as what you developed in PowerShell. Okay, just kind of a highlight, where do I want to use each? In PowerShell, managing Windows systems, automating enterprise services, working with Microsoft ecosystems, and building structured automation tools. Okay, Bash, when we're managing in a Linux environment, okay, we will want to use Bash. Working with containers, performing text processing, and automating Linux environments. So anything having to do with Linux, it's probably better to go ahead and bite the bullet and learn Bash. And in the batch system, batch file, writing simple startup scripts and running lightweight commands is when we want to use Batch and BHP. VB script, it's a primary legacy system. Okay, not really recommended to be used, but again, it's the predecessor to PowerShell. From a professional perspective, if you're a system administrator today, okay, you should understand PowerShell for Windows and Bash for Linux. Okay, both of them are the two major systems that are basically being used today in computers. So learning PowerShell is a must, and you're going to hit Linux sooner or later. So at least understanding what Bash does and how it does it. Here it says, modern environments are hybrid, okay, which means we might run into a little bit of both. If we're talking about working things from the cloud, we got Windows servers, Linux servers, containers, DevOps operations. So you'll be basically using the same type of functions that we learned in PowerShell in the cloud. Okay, so what we have talked about as far as controlling from a PowerShell perspective, we also have that same capability for Linux. The best administrators are multilingual in scripting. I'll go with that, just as far as knowing, and when you're getting into other systems, you know the ins and outs. Windows, of course, is going to be the predominant. Linux is not that far behind. So having both would be great, but I think that with PowerShell, and basically the object-oriented nature of it, that would be the first particular scripting tool that you should basically be concentrating on. Okay. And then coming up with Linux as a backup. Okay. Okay, so just as an overall course reflection, okay, you understand structured automation, functions and modules, security auditing, error handling, scheduling, cross-platform scripting differences. You've moved from a command user to an automation engineer in our 6 weeks. So we're glad everybody was here. Week 7, we're going to be concentrating on the presentation of all these concepts we've gone over the last 6 weeks. So thank you for being here and looking forward to seeing how your presentations turn out for scripting CS150. See you soon. Bye.